There are moments when your mind goes quiet in a way that feels unfamiliar, not peaceful, not exactly calm, just quiet. The usual background noise softens, the constant replaying, the planning, the worrying, and suddenly there's space. At first it can feel almost uncomfortable, like something is missing, like you should be thinking more, feeling more, doing something with the silence. You might even wonder if this quiet means something is wrong. But stay with me for a moment, because when your mind goes quiet like this, it isn't random, it isn't accidental, and it isn't a sign that you've disappeared. There's a reason for it, and understanding that reason might change the way you see this silence entirely. This kind of quiet happens more often than people admit, but almost no one talks about it, because it's hard to explain. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it doesn't look like a breakdown. It just feels like distance. Like your thoughts are further away than usual, like your emotions are softer, like you're present, but not fully inside the moment. And when that happens, it's easy to turn on yourself. You might wonder if you've become numb, or detached, or somehow less than you used to be. But this quiet does not mean you're broken. It does not mean you've lost your depth. It does not mean your feelings are gone. Sometimes the mind lowers the volume for a reason, not to erase you, not to punish you, but to protect something. Stay with this idea, because what feels like emptiness might actually be something else entirely. Sometimes the quiet is your nervous system stepping in, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly shifting gears. When you've been under pressure for a long time, your mind doesn't always react with panic. Sometimes it reacts with reduction. It lowers the noise, it limits the input, it simplifies what it can. Because constant thinking takes energy, constant feeling takes energy, constant reacting takes even more. And if you've been carrying stress for weeks or months or longer than you realized, your system may decide to conserve. So instead of racing thoughts, there's stillness. Instead of emotional spikes, there's flatness. Instead of constant inner commentary, there's space. That space can feel unfamiliar, almost like something shut off, but it's not failure. It's more like a dimmer switch. Your mind is not abandoning you, it's regulating. There's a difference between being empty and being paused. A pause is protective. A pause creates breathing room. A pause keeps you from burning out completely. And here's something important. This kind of quiet doesn't mean nothing is happening. It just means it's happening differently. And this isn't the only layer to it, because sometimes the silence isn't just protection. Sometimes it's processing. Not all thinking is loud. Some of the most important shifts in your life happen without words, underneath the surface, without commentary, without clear explanation. You might assume that if you're not actively analyzing something, you're not dealing with it. But that isn't how the mind works. There are layers beneath awareness that continue sorting, integrating, connecting. Experiences you haven't fully understood yet. Conversations you're still absorbing. Changes you haven't named. And while that integration happens, the surface can go quiet. It can feel like nothing is moving, but something is. Think about how your body heals a cut. You don't consciously participate in every cell repairing itself. It happens quietly, internally, gradually. The mind can work the same way. Sometimes clarity needs silence first. Sometimes growth feels like stillness before it feels like direction. And when you're in that in-between space, it's uncomfortable because you don't have words for what's changing. You don't even know what you're becoming. You just know the usual noise isn't there. that doesn't mean you're empty. It may mean you're reorganizing. And there's another layer people rarely consider, because not all silence comes from processing. Sometimes it comes from something much simpler and much more human. Sometimes the quiet isn't mysterious, it's tired. If you've been strong for a long time, if you've been responsible, steady, dependable, if you've been the one who keeps going no matter what, your inner world may have learned to quiet itself just to keep up. Constant coping can mute your internal dialogue, not because you don't care, but because caring at full volume every day is heavy. When you're managing work, expectations, relationships, uncertainty, the mind prioritizes function. It focuses on what must be done. It reduces what feels optional. And sometimes your inner voice gets labeled as optional, so it softens. Not permanently, not dramatically, just enough to help you carry what you're carrying. Over time, that softening can start to feel like distance. You might say, I don't even know what I feel anymore. But that doesn't mean the feelings are gone. It may mean you've been surviving. There's a difference between peace and depletion. Peace feels grounded. Depletion feels flat. And if what you're experiencing feels flat, it might simply be a sign that you've been carrying more than you let yourself admit. This quiet, then, isn't weakness. It's information, and it's not permanent. Because there's another reason silence can appear, especially when something inside you is shifting. There are moments in life when the version of you that used to operate automatically no longer fits. The goals that once drove you feel distant. The reactions you once had don't come as quickly. Even your opinions can feel less solid. That in-between space can be quiet, because the old patterns are fading, but the new ones haven't fully formed. It can feel like standing in a hallway between two rooms. You've left one, you haven't entered the next, and hallways are rarely loud. When identity shifts, the mind often slows down. It stops narrating in the old way. It hesitates before committing to new thoughts. That hesitation can feel like blankness, but it might actually be space. Space where you're reevaluating, space where you're unconsciously deciding what still belongs to you. This kind of silence doesn't mean you're losing yourself. It may mean you're outgrowing something. And growth is rarely noisy in the beginning. Before reassurance, though, there's something important to notice about your quiet, something personal. Before you try to fix this quiet, notice it. Is it heavy or is it light? Does it feel protective or simply tired? There isn't a correct answer, just information. Your quiet has a texture, a tone, a temperature, and the way it feels to you matters more than any explanation. You don't have to label it perfectly. You don't have to analyze it deeply. Just acknowledging it changes your relationship to it. If you want to, you could describe it in one word, not for anyone else, just to give shape to what feels undefined. And if being here with this conversation feels steady, you can stay. There's no urgency, just one more piece to this. Because the quiet you're experiencing is not an ending, and it doesn't mean you've disappeared. When your mind goes quiet like this, it is not abandoning you. It is not proof that you are empty. It is not evidence that you've lost depth, emotion, or direction. Silence can be many things. It can be protection. It can be processing. It can be exhaustion, asking for gentleness. It can be space forming around a version of you that is slowly changing. But it is not failure. You are still here. Even if your thoughts are softer, even if your reactions are slower, even if you don't recognize yourself as clearly as you once did. Nothing essential about you disappears in quiet. If anything, the quiet sometimes protects what matters most until you have the energy to feel it fully again. So you don't have to rush to fill the space. You don't have to force noise just to prove you're okay. You're allowed to sit inside this stillness. You're allowed to trust that something steady remains beneath it, and you are not alone in that silence.